Hello and welcome to another episode of New World Comics Podcast. I'm Buck Berlin, owner-operator of this fine establishment. Joined with me this week, again, is George Carle.
Good hello, evening, morning, whenever you're watching this.
Yay! And when I say again, like you've been on before, this isn't continuing from the exact previous episode.
Personal chronology, not necessarily viewer chronology.
Right, because we just got through Batman Day this last weekend. So,
yes.
Yeah. Thank God we all got rest and didn't have to, put anything up or get ready or anything, right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely nothing was put away.
Yeah. Oh, George, thanks for being back. It's always a blast talking because, so few people understand the Godzilla love that I have.
Yes. Plus, it helps that I talk a lot.
So. Well, there's that.
Well, I mean, when the call went out for me to be here, it was kind of like there was you have a new bat signal. It's kind of like an empty word balloon, and I know someone's got to fill that, so I guess, it was obviously calling for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if ever we have you on and we don't talk about Godzilla. Like, it's...
Ooh, that'll be rough. I'll be here grimacing or whatever.
I'd say it'd be like me not talking about Fantastic Four, but I've had to not talk about Fantastic Four before. So.
How about that time Fantastic Four fought Godzilla?
Oh, man.
That must have been great.
It was. Yeah. Man, the old Marvel series is just so underrated. Like, it's... You look at it, and it looks like a cash grab, which it was, but it wasn't treated like one.
No, there was actually things that made sense. That's one of the big things that's important about a comic book universe. No matter what outlandish thing you're doing, in order to achieve that suspension of disbelief, you should at least be consistent in their universe. For example, they decided to try to take on Godzilla with Pym particles.
Yes, so they shrunk him.
Yeah.
And he went into the sewer, and then he fought a rat.
A New York rat.
Yeah.
Toughest.
Yeah, the toughest of rats. Yeah. And it was just so cool. And then later on, just so Marvel could still kind of, use all of what had happened in their continuity, they changed Godzilla just so to where he's still around.
Yes, well, the dorsal plates... Oh, yeah. Conveniently, we have something here. The dorsal plates were changed into just a big fin, and they then put a horn on his nose, and I think maybe some webbing more here and there. And
it looks like they kind of got rid of the scales.
Still was green.
Yeah, because Marvel Godzilla was green, which maybe it was just Godzilla 2000 that it hadn't.
No. This is a family oriented or family friendly podcast.
Yeah.
So don't be cussing in front of me, sir, or at least inciting me to cuss. That'd be more accurate.
Fair enough. I'll see what I can do, but
no promises.
No promises.
Okay. Should I self-send? Maybe just
we can have
bleep myself.
Drew bleep things out,
or I could bleep myself or something. If
it's not that kind of podcast. Let's get some bleeps right now, and yep, there we go. Now everyone's listening or have left.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, that ends the conclusion of the shortest podcast, ironically, too, that I'm on.
See y'all next week. No. So back to the Godzilla stuff. Japan and Marvel have this, really weird, long history together. I was reading an article not too long ago about how Spider-Man caused Power Rangers, and and when I read the article, it was the how do you go from Power Rangers to Spider-Man? Like I get sure they're both running around in spandex suits, but what?
Yeah, I mean that's almost like somehow cardboard is responsible for the orbit of the moon or something. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's how does that even happen? So it turns out that and this is one article I haven't looked up the other sources, so that this might not be entirely factual, but it all seemed to make sense to me, and it looked like everything was kind of backed up.
It's absurd enough to be true.
Yeah. So Japan loved Spider-Man, but didn't really care about Peter Parker or any of the actual backstory. So they wanted to license Spider-Man to make shows and merchandise and all sorts of stuff, but they didn't care about translating the comic or anything over there. So they got the rights to Spider-Man, but they did their own thing with it. And their guys in marketing, their creative teams, all that, had Spider-Man get powers from this alien who came down and was like the last of his race, who was like a spider god from the planet Spider, and he had healing blood and all of the Spider-Man powers that Spider-Man had, and he would like fight the mob or monsters or whatever a Spider-Man in Japan fought. But he had this really cool vehicle that was also the spaceship from the other guy that would transform into this big machine that was half Jaguar.
This sounds like something someone would put together on a weekend because they have a deadline.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, although it also sounds like, hey, what do kids like? Let's use all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they were quite being as formulaic as people are now, but
But if it was food, it would sound like, all right, what do kids like? Mac and cheese, chocolate candy, and just kind of mashing it all together in something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where what came out just so happened to be the things that were there on the table, and luckily nothing quite clashed. So all that went on. Stanley loved the show, just absolutely loved everything about it, thought it was the coolest thing ever. Marvel did not. Marvel was like, you guys keep it. But Japan was making just tons of money off of just Spider-Man stuff. That they were like, well, what else can we use?
People are buying it.
Yeah, so Marvel was like, how about Captain America? They were like, we love superheroes like Captain America. Great. Let's use that. And then they realized the problem with the whole Captain America business wouldn't.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a cut against the grain a little bit.
Yeah, how do you sell Captain America in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they started kind of forming their own ideas around their own super team, and that's where all the Super Sentai stuff came about.
And about what years was this happening?
This was late 70s.
Just in the way it seems like it couldn't be that long ago. Yes, yet it had to be that long ago.
Yeah, or it was mid to late 70s. The article didn't give like an exact timeline, but it was 70s ish. Late 70s. So instead of licensing out Captain America, they let everything lapse on Spider-Man. They're like, well, let's go forward with our own stuff. And they had a group of superheroes, which they were like, oh, this is the greatest idea. And each of them had their own vehicle, and then they had their own vehicle that transformed to its own thing, and then all of them merged together and formed a bigger vehicle, and that's where all the Super Sentai stuff after came from, which is where what eventually became Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came from.
But even just in your brief discussion there, you could see elements of Voltron or whatever, all that kind of stuff, being there.
Yeah, so it's this really cool, like, wow, Spider-Man started all that. The coolest thing out of the article, Stan Lee begged to license those shows back over here, and his idea was, if you take those shows, get rid of the Japanese actors that are, while they're out of costume, write in some American actors, and then rewrite the script around that, you have your own show. You have 30% of a show done, it's this really cool action-packed thing, and everyone involved said it was the worst idea they'd ever heard. And then, like 10 years later, Saban did it, and we got Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Just wonder what that alternate world would have been if they said yes to that.
It's just this like, wow. So, yeah, Spider-Man was the seed of... Yeah, which, because AD had been on one of these podcasts, and he told, which was our first two-parter, where he was telling me all about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Because, like, I liked it when I was little. I watched the first 1 or 2 seasons. I saw the movie and then, moved on just because there was other comic stuff. But he kept with it, and there's so much that went on with it that, I get the interest now. Like, Back then it was I'm young, love Godzilla, and this is Godzilla like.
Yeah, and this is interesting where the different the generation or half generation or whatever you want to put, because obviously I was I was past that point,
Right.
and wanting more serious stuff with Godzilla at the point where I endured when it was getting goofier.
Yeah.
The more aware you become, all right, Godzilla's cool. Oh, I wish they would do it the way I'm imagining it. But when you're younger, whatever you gravitate towards or whatever grafts onto you or however, nature, nurture, whatever it is, that, your appreciation, it sticks with you. Like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, again, apologies to the fans, was just, like.
Well, and it's one of those where, not everything is made for everybody.
No,
so.
true. But
yeah.
Could it have been different if I was born late? Probably.
Yeah.
Like, yay, that's, all this, all the kind of stuff you described there would be like, yeah, I'd be right on board with, great, let's have a remake or a revival or good toys are coming out or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how were you with, like, Ultraman when he was around?
I didn't, believe it or not, I didn't see Ultraman. It was not available on any of the secondary stations. And you would think, all right, you're living in New York, you should have all sorts of stuff. But I knew vaguely of Ultraman. I'd hear somebody say something about it, or if I'd get the occasional book. Again, back in my day, we had very few books on this sort of stuff, and we were thankful.
Yeah.
There were all sorts of things that all I'd get is a caption or a picture or a reference to. And sometimes, now looking back on them, some of them were even fake. Or not fake, but mistaken or misinformation, or anything like that. So Ultraman was just a, what? Kind of thing. Never got to see that.
Interesting, because on Fox Kids, right around the time that X-Men was coming out, they had redubbed Ultraman episodes. So I had Ultraman just briefly. It probably lasted one season. Looking back on it, like it's hard to tell because for me, if it wasn't Batman, X-Men, or Spider-Man, like I didn't care.
The closest thing I had was Gigantor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, an earlier anime. So giant robot fighting giant robot monster kind of things or whatever. As a kid, and that was a big deal. Arguing with friends at school, is Gigantor better than Godzilla or whatever? That. So yeah, he was probably the closest thing I had that would run in that lane. And of course, a cartoon is still not live action. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. So you're of the age of like Shonen or Shogun Warriors and all that. So
yes, but the only exposure I got to them was the commercials of why can't I have that? No, and they have a Godzilla too.
Yeah.
And it was kind of mixed emotions because, there's a great big Godzilla toy. I mean, growing up, the toys I had were Aurora models, and I just learned to be very careful with them. And then now this Godzilla that's almost twice as big, but then it has and the kid next door had it had wheels on it and no fins,
and it shot its fist.
Yeah, and it was like, yay, there's Godzilla. What are you doing to him? But of course, not even being old enough to articulate those points, something's wrong. And I mean, if I had one, that fist would tape that fist on, glue that fist on. That's just. Break those wheels off.
Yeah, the fire breathing action I thought was really, really ingenious because it was like a spitting tongue.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, at least that would have been trying to emulate something that was accurate to the character and not like, okay, we're going to trim the fins down because that just doesn't work. I mean, they had the little bumps back there, but it still is not enough.
I mean, I understand, with like packaging and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where that might not quite fly.
Or the edges might have been a little too sharp for the plastic they had to use, etc.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen more Godzillas than I have Shogun Warriors, honestly. Or mostly complete Godzillas at this point. Like, I've seen so many without their fists.
Well, yeah. I mean, and even then, I don't think the Godzilla was as marketed. It wasn't more of a later version, later in the series, and. And any Godzilla person would have kind of kept it if they knew of it.
It's fun. We're talking the Shogun Warriors and Godzilla stuff. In the Marvel comics, we should talk actual Marvel monsters.
Yes,
because that's one thing that we haven't really talked about in the show, and we just had the Marvel monster crossover. Come out a few months ago, and then the one shot that just was to kind of smooth things over from that. which it should have been one of the coolest Marvel crossovers. Because, I mean, you have all your heroes fighting giant monsters. How hard is that to write and tell that story?
Yet, and somehow it's easy to mess up.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those that anytime you include, here's a kid behind the whole thing, ruins most of the drama, the peril.
Well, in a way, too, you could say that it was following certain, or at least an homage to certain historical points of the Godzilla and the 60s when Gamera became popular.
Yeah.
And it was kid oriented. And then Toho reacted with Godzilla being more cutesy, Son of Godzilla, stuff like that. So you could say, if you were trying to be an apologist for that work, is, well, we are staying true to the genre by having it a kid behind all of it. But this goes back, though, to what I said earlier about the consistency of a universe.
Yeah.
If you have, and again, disclaimer, I know we're talking about a comic book universe where Dracula coexists with Thor and eternity and all that. So yeah, this is somewhat of a silly argument to have. But
well, I don't know. With more than just Thor and all the other stuff, I think it all kind of makes more sense that we have Dracula as some sort of offshoot. I'm just making the point that during these conversations, someone will occasionally throw out why are you arguing about a fantasy universe anyway? But, well, heck, then forget it. Let's just end the podcast now. Well, yeah, I mean, to what point do your nihilistic tendencies stop? Because I mean, why argue about anything at that point?
True.
Yeah.
But anyway, that aside, that whoever would want to throw that out now, that aside. You have this kid that can draw monsters into existence. Okay, the existence of someone with that power should be the latest and greatest Marvel great event. What was that one before that when they had that cosmic cube piece that was sentient? Or
Standoff or
whatever. Yeah, Standoff. That being that kid is on the order of or near the order of that sort of power.
Right. It's one of those where. I mean, so the kid is limited to his amount of graphite in his pencil and the amount of paper that he has. How big do these drawings have to be? Does it have to be a special?
Or fine. Then why don't we put just put something in his. What happens if we put something in his food that just makes him see hallucinate and then or somehow psychologically suggest that everything is a monster, so he could draw everything into existence.
Yeah.
It's. But to get away from those absurdities and just talk about what sort of fiction that is, that's moving from a science fiction kind of thing that would be in a comic to a more fantastical, fanciful. That's something that almost belongs more in a fairy tale than a comic book. If you're going to do that kind of spectrum, so that's very annoying.
Yeah, and I mean with all of the monsters, Marvel really found a way to make all of it work, with having Mole Man and his underground creatures take over and form a monster island to where, all of them can hang out here. They can live underground, above ground, wherever they fit best. Here's where all of them live peacefully, out of the way. You don't have to kill them off. You don't have to say, no, that never happened. They all hang out here and everything's cool.
And it does become a convenient place to put things. Also, if there's I think some of those monsters where there was allusions or even outright statements to them being of the deviant race, like the especially monstrous versions of you guys go here. And,
and that's what I love about it is that some of them are aliens, some of them are humanoids that have been mutated, some of them are aliens that have bred and done all and then they've further mutated or they've evolved into. So it's a little bit of everything. It's not just one thing that this is all monsters.
Yeah, and it really would encompass the genre of everything we used to call as monster movies. The alien from outer space is trying to kill us, which someone might argue they're not really a monster. If we were on their planet, we'd be the monster. Blah blah. That old cliche, but it works for that Monster Island thing. And it was great.
And then Mole Man had to show up on to UN meetings and stuff. It was great. He was the leader of a sovereign nation.
Well, but that would be, and that goes back to the point of consistency. if you had such a place, these monsters would be some form of WMD based on what they could possibly do. So you would want to negotiate from time to time, or keep them cordoned off, or make some type of standoff relationship that said, okay, we won't hurl nukes at you if you don't throw monsters at our cities.
Yeah.
Live in peace, and then we could come up with plot reasons to get them involved, and then Thor can fight them on occasion and not have to worry about again.
Yeah, it's because it's one of those where hey, sorry about that guy. He's a rogue individual that ran off and is not part of this. We bring him back, and we would deal with him accordingly.
And how many other times have heroes gone rogue because someone mind whammied them?
Yeah. And one of the best use of all that is in Astonishing X-Men, right before it ended for the all the Hickman stuff. Havoc had just gone through whatever cleansing to make him, old Alex Summers again, post-Axis, where he went nuts and was kind of a villain again. Like he's back to normal. So he, first thing he does, he sees giant monster going through New York. So what's he do? He attacks it because he's like, well, where is everyone? And it turns out everyone else was keeping the public away from this monster while it safely traveled through New York City because it was just doing everything it could. So Havoc, it lived up to his name and ruined like all relations with the superheroes and Monster Island with Mole Man. It caused all sorts of property damage. It ruined the monsters like wherewithal to be controlled, whatever. Like it was just this
nice
awful thing that he accidentally did, just trying to defend everyone from it. So it just kind of plays into the look at what you can do if you play with your own rules and build your own world like that.
Well, and what does bug me a little bit sometimes about these monster sightings or whatever is that they are not used to their fullest extent. I mean, it gets, again, as a monster fan and one who's collected the reprints from Where Monsters Dwell and all that, when you see that familiar face or faces, depending on the monster, it's like, hey, that's that. Yeah, but they don't run with that enough.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time we've seen Droom? It was, what was that Iron Man one from years ago where, was it Big in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
That one?
Yeah.
Or something like that. They even had kind of an illusion or a made-up backstory. There was like an Ultraman equivalent that he teamed up with, and it was almost like winking at the Godzilla 70s stuff or his own fighter or something.
Yeah, the last time that I feel like monsters really showed up and mattered and it felt like, they were acknowledging the past was the Fin Fang 4.
Yes.
It was Eric Powell like doing his best with like Fin Fang Foom, Electro, but not that Electro.
Gugam. And what's that King Kong variant? Yeah. Oh boy, big monster fans.
Yeah.
Can't remember the name. That's great. Okay, hey, could you dub in something or whatever? Like, really
we'll have it flash on the screen right now.
It was Gorgilla.
There you go. Perfect.
I got it.
It's
in there somewhere.
Yeah, Drew didn't have to do any.
Thank you. No, that was not it perfectly matched. So.
Yeah.
I think he had a tail too, so there was kind of like a giant baboon.
So that's the last time that you really saw the progression of character with these monsters, and good use of their character and backstory and motivation, those kinds of things. But more often than not, they're just treated like, I need a giant bad thing. Here you go.
Yeah.
Well, I say that Fin Fang Foom's kind of the exception. Like he showed up in the beginning of this current Iron Man story, and he's raining terror and doing all this awful stuff. But he was, he's essentially a good guy now. Like he's not a bad guy.
Well, yeah, he's not. All right, my purpose every morning he gets up is to destroy the world.
Right. He's like, well, I'm just trying to, live my life and do what I can while I'm stuck here on Earth. And then you find out, he's being controlled by the controller. Here's the controller disc on his back. And Foom's like, sorry, Iron Man, didn't mean to do that. go get a controller for me. I'm kind of upset about this.
Well, but they could have run with those sort of things even further because taking that, combining it with Fin Fang 4, the idea they had there, instead of what writer was it that kind of poo-pooed that as part of not, that's just a rumor. It didn't happen when he revived. It was when they did that. It was the same series that did that opening issue that did that homage shot to one of the Godzilla ones where they're dragging him into the helicarrier.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't remember.
Well, whoever you are,
yeah,
it's a good thing we forgot you.
He's going to give you what for.
That's right.
Yeah.
If I ever figure that out, because I'm not reading that comic again, so I won't find your name. So good for you.
I mean, it's not as heinous as like the Howling Commando series.
No, and it would have been great if why go out of your way to do that, to ruin that for a fellow Fin Fang Foom fan? Thank you. Why do you didn't have to add that line. And the Howling Commandos are the worst part about it. It was just meh.
Yeah, like so you're getting Werewolf by Night, and you're getting you're getting all these monsters together, and the smaller monsters.
But they had the giant monsters in there too.
Yeah,
Groot. Well, Groot originally started out as a giant monster, and at that time, that was pre-I Am Groot stuff. So he was having this some type of discussion. I forget with who when he was in his cage or enclosure or whatever you want to call it to somebody. So he was intelligent, articulate, and again, I Am Groot didn't start till what the second Guardians run or
it was right around the second Annihilation.
Okay,
and they explained it as an illness that his people get, where sap hardens over their vocal cords, and that's what all you hear, or to some people, and then some people can still kind of make out the subtleties and nuance.
Great, fine.
Yeah, like it was okay, cool. Like,
well, it worked out great in the long run. I mean, how well how well did the movie do? And
because of that,
is that contributing to it?
Very much. I mean, this is just of a long line of characters that have had they only say one thing, but you can listen to the inflection of their voice and the more subtle parts to it.
But to get back to your point about Howling Commandos, they did really try in the sense of getting the panorama of characters. The Glob even showed up, which was a Man-Thing like enemy of the Hulk from, what was it, like 129 or earlier?
Like way early.
It may have been earlier than that. It may have been like even pre-100.
It was of the era of Freak of the Month for Hulk.
Yeah.
Like it's the, man, Hulk's wandering the desert. Oh no, he ran into this monster.
Right. And why did they even need to make a... that wasn't pre-Man-Thing, I don't think, or was it?
It may have just been, but
perhaps. But generic swamp monster, they brought him back and even rigged him up with some vocal cords so he could, all right, it's really a man in there, and it's not just some mindless heap of stuff.
I think that's why I hate it so much. It's because there was so much potential there that, S.H.I.E.L.D. with all of its, underhandedness and like behind-the-scenes workings, of course they try to weaponize monsters because no one wants to go look for monsters.
Right.
And, once you create such a great thing, half of the story needs to be, well, what are you doing with it? Because now that exists in the world, why is this not a constant thing?
Well, again, back to continuity of a world, and I gave up on continuity a long time ago, or rather consistency, not continuity. But they do kind of touch each other.
Yeah,
it's. If you got all these monsters and in exchange for you having a place to live, you'll look at it. It's kind of like another version of Suicide Squad or something like. It's going to be a trade-off. We just can't spend resources giving you a place to live and not get and
not get something out of it. Yeah.
So there's going to have to be a switch off. But the Howling Commandos. But again, my complaint that I had in probably this last podcast or a future one, depending on when they're of the artwork, it's, again, apologies to those folks who are actually doing the work, but it's relegated to sometimes a B-lister artist. Yeah. So it makes it a little less, hey, we're taking this a little less seriously, and it's a little less continuity, in feeling, even though it really is supposedly part of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, well, and, I think that it was sure, let's try that because the last couple things we tried haven't stuck. Whereas I think if they mentioned to someone like, hey, it'd be really cool if you could find a creative use for these things that we would like to see used, and then someone do that, oh man, have I got an idea for that, as opposed to someone have an idea for all of that, let's see if I can make it work.
Yeah.
It's a better, like, in the Spider-Man series with, like, Eric Larson, when he got to do his own, like, Sinister Six run. The inclusion, like, once they got rid of Sandman and they're like, oh wait, we're the Sinister Five, we need one more. Let's get a new heavy hitter. They brought in Gog,
the heaviest hitter of all.
Yeah, who was just there being a big giant monster who like had to crash into this warehouse and just kind of stick his head in, and he was just kind of slowly swatting at everyone.
And it was perfectly legitimate to bring him in because he had Spider-Man creds. I mean, I forget what the title was, but it was around issue 20 of something that Kazar was in, because Gog was from.
It was like Astonishing Tales or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, let's string a couple of words together, generic to release some new idea out there. But was it? And I guess since it was Kazar, he must have been from Savage Land, but he really is an alien.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and they even mentioned that they had gotten alien tech, and that's where they got their tricked out guns and all that other cool stuff. But it felt like a really cool inclusion of them doing that. Oh yeah, monsters exist. Let's steal one.
Yeah.
He's going to act out anyway. Let's just have him act out against the people we don't like.
And something interesting about Gog too is that, in a way, and you correct me if I'm wrong, if this is something that doesn't match up, is he wasn't strictly a Marvel monster in the sense that he was from the cast of characters that preceded Marvel going into the superhero universe. He was created after that point.
Yeah,
but in the spirit of those monsters.
Yeah, he's post-Atomic Age Marvel monster.
Yeah.
Because there was a little bit of a revival of that in the 70s, because, like you had your horror creatures come back, your mummy, your vampires, the
Universal Monsters analogs.
Yeah. You had them come back, and then Man-Thing worked out, and a couple other things worked out that they were like, well, let's try some other characters, like the Living Colossus.
Yes. But that was from their pre.
Well,
but they brought him back.
Yeah, not that. God, who am I thinking?
Golem.
Yeah, and then
that was, I think, was that Supernatural Tales when he started? But he only
he had a handful. But then there was the we were just talking about earlier, the Marvel team up with Cage, the the green with the red eyes.
Oh, you mean? Oh, okay. Yeah, that was the issue before. That would be Brigadoon.
Brigadoon, yeah. So
giant scroll-looking guy.
Yeah. So you had the introduction of all these other monsters.
Oh, I need to do a selfish interruption.
Yeah.
And ask help from the audience. Okay. I love the Brigadoon issue that he's talking about. An early Marvel 2-in-1 where it was when Ben Grimm first really interacted with Luke Cage after he got his powers back.
Yeah.
Now Buck insists that there was another appearance of Brigadoon somewhere.
I swear he's
And
pre monsters crossover that just happened.
Right. This is years ago, and you thought it was sometime in Power Man and Iron Fist, but
I could swear it was. It may have been early to mid 2000s. Like
someone knows if someone knows the answer, because it doesn't appear on Grand Comics database or anything. So if someone knows the answer to this,
let us know.
Please.
And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it.
And I'll be sad because I really want the comic to exist.
So. But I feel like he's made appearances or made another appearance, and he wasn't just a one-off.
I'm surprised with all the digging they've done with a lot of these big stories, that since that character looks so giant Skrull-like, that they didn't bring him back for Secret Invasion or something
or say he's a failed Super Skrull or something. Well, and there's a lot of things that, like, what qualifies as a monster, like do the frost giants count? Like if just one shows up, is he a monster, or things like that?
Yeah, he should.
Right.
But we know he doesn't or wouldn't.
Right.
Even though, but then Fin Fang Foom is just from a race of dragons, so why is he involved?
Yeah, it's weird. Like when there's one of them, it's a this, but when there's a group of them, it's not that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me wind this back just a little with the inclusion of like the horror monsters.
Okay.
So, do you see it that they and the big giant monsters should be lumped into the catch-all term of monster? Do you think they have a place on Monster Island?
Funny you should say that, because when you were bringing up the Monster Island part, I was thinking of what was the best place for the congregation of those smaller monsters. And I think the best was when they were in like Monster City, when they took over, I guess either took over where the Morlocks used to live or was like some yet lower area. Because the interaction of them, and someone who's got a better monster history, please, let us know somehow. But in my mind, growing up with this stuff, which happened to be at the right time of the repeats of the Universal monsters hitting the TV all the time, the Hammer productions, but then Aurora models came along and they have all the man-sized monsters. I even called them that like a kid.
Yeah.
Man-sized monsters, and in the lineup of all their stuff. Then I had King Kong and Godzilla too.
Yeah.
Which of course were roughly the same size because of the packaging and everything.
Yeah.
So even then there was kind of an association, but you had to make a distinction. I don't think they really could go together, but some overlapping would be interesting. For example, if Dracula was trying to, once again take over the world, might he not think of trying to get Mole Man to do something or get some of his stuff? You could have something to work with there.
Yeah. Well, and it's the inclusion of Dracula with all this now, it becomes does one guy constitute as a monster, whereas like he's head of a race kind of thing,
But he's, in his own way, a world-class threat, more than a lot of these other monsters.
Right. Well, and particularly now, Marvel's really amped him up.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
I just didn't like what they did when it was time to fight the X-Men. It's just there's just something not...
Yeah, because it's the... so you're just a suave, creep who can infect people?
I want Tomb of Dracula, 70s Dracula back.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he had that nobility about him. Even though he was purely evil, he had enough nobility that, well, if Dracula respects me, I'd be kind of cool. Even though I think he's terrible.
Oh, okay. You mean the? Okay.
Yeah, I want that Dracula.
Yeah, no, I'm misunderstood because he's fought the X-Men a couple times.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So there was the X-Men annual where he infected Storm. Way back when.
Yeah, no, I was talking more recently when they had the whole
red armor and
white-haired
big
thing. Yeah, no,
yeah.
It's like
he's got a big giant sword now, and
they're trying to revive him as go back to the roots of when Vlad Tepes, I guess, was around, and I don't know how much of that really lines up with history accurate stuff, but I guess they were trying to grab onto some of it. That's what I meant. That period, which is like
right.
He just became kind of a generic whatever.
Yeah, he's a super strong, super tough guy who now has armor, and oh, by the way, he also has all the Dracula powers.
How many of those do we really have if you want to analyze?
Yeah, which makes it even weirder that Blade was going to show up with a wooden stake and his night vision sunglasses and his really cool pants. Thankfully, Drew will insert a picture right now for everyone's edification of first appearance Blade, who looks super fly. Like, I love this guy.
Oh yeah, I
wish that he would go back to this look, but that's just me and my love of camp. So, but the thing is that guy shows up to fight Dracula, like classic Bela Lugosi Dracula. Sure, I could see them having it out and it being a tough fight for the both of them. Blade shows up like that versus here's a dude with a giant sword, suit of armor, big weird ponytail.
Army of vampires, etc. Taking on the X. Yeah.
What's Blade gonna do?
Now, I mean, he would be ultra cool if he could win that, but again, who's gonna believe that?
I mean, even if he shows up as Wesley Snipes Blade, having paid all his dues
Yeah,
Like still that Blade versus big armored Dracula. I'm gonna give it to Dracula.
yeah, it's there's just no conceivable way. Again, here we are in our comic book universe arguing about these sort of things, but
Yeah.
the consistency wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
To just win like that.
Well, because then you'd have to like amp up Werewolf by Night, that kind of stuff.
He's no longer allergic to silver, and he has the power of all werewolves on the earth at the same time.
Yeah. Oh man, speaking of camp, man, Werewolf by Night's real name is Jack Russell.
Yes.
Like that's the coolest thing. I love it so much. Like it's it's like Mr. Miracle being scot-free.
Now, I don't know if someone's done this, but maybe like on the old school Assistant Editors Month or something, but it would be interesting to see if some of the smarter characters, like a Reed Richards or someone else who is into interdimensional things, starts to realize, maybe a Reed Richards with someone who's maybe got some more literary skills of some type. They put together a theory that if you have an ironic name, that it's evidence that you live in a fictional universe.
I've always maintained that if Marvel really wanted to, fix their continuity problems, just have like Impossible Man and Kang team up and like, oh, we figured out why no one ages.
Yeah, something like that, or there's some type of bet that Impossible Man loses or something that he's got to make good on, or I guess the Grandmaster would be involved with that.
Yeah.
It's something, and then I always want the Time Variance Authority involved. Maybe.
I mean, with the inclusion of the She-Hulk show coming up, we might see more of them.
Listen, we want Justice Peace, and we want Justice Peace in there, and we need that cast right, and we need him involved.
Yeah.
So,
one of the customers came up to me during Batman Day. He was like, "Buck, I'm not much of an actor, but if you need an awesome Andy, I'm your man." I was like, "Oh my god, I hadn't considered doing an awesome Andy."
I did. Hello.
Oh my god, yeah.
Wow.
Because as soon as he said it, I know exactly how I'm going to do the helmet for that. He's just got to figure out how to write on a slate board.
Yeah. Yeah, if he loves it enough, figure out how to do it.
Yeah, because oh my god, how amazing would that be?
Yeah,
so
that would be great.
Yeah, I would love to do a She-Hulk superhero school where here's She-Hulk and her cast of characters because there's enough of them and they're interesting enough and yeah.
That would be a great
School. You know what? Let's bring up a interesting point. So you have all your monsters. You have the Incredible Hulk, who himself is pretty much a monster.
Right.
So you could see him, being part of the thing. She-Hulk, where does she sit?
I guess it depends if you're talking about Savage She-Hulk or Sensational She-Hulk or...
just short of when she, bulked up for like this, right before this current Avengers run. Even Savage She-Hulk, I don't think quite was as savage as they intended her to be. Like,
true.
She didn't really go on rampages. Like, she kind of got focused and thrown into the thing because they were afraid of, upsetting the female audience back in the 70s or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
even Marvel muddies the waters a bit because on that bunch of years ago when they had the temporarily revived, that whole monsters thing where they had Big in Japan, Monsters on the Prowl, whatever. I think it was the Monsters on the Prowl title where they said a bunch of monsters have escaped. How do you defeat them? With more monsters. And they had the guys fighting them was Thing, Hulk, Giant Man, and was it Beast?
yes.
So
Yeah.
by their own admission, those four characters are monsters. I mean, you could say, well, how's Giant Man a monster?
I love the idea of Giant Man being classified in the monsters.
Colossal Man from the old 50s movie. So, okay, that fits.
Well, and at home I have a setup of, giant monster figures like Godzilla, Gamera, anything that fits into the, kaiju category or even close to. I have this Giant Man figure that's part of the mix just because his classic costume looks very kaiju-esque. Like it looks like a guy who puts on a suit and is like, I'm gonna go fight a big
little Ultraman.
Yeah. Like it's just shy of putting on a silver mask and we're like, yeah, let's Ultraman this up.
Well, how neat would that be if he well, now that I'm fighting this monster, I added this new thing to my, this protective face shield to my.
Oh, don't get me wrong. He's had protective face shields that look really dumb before.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, yeah, he's had some of the worst costumes. Although, there's something that kind of sort of looks that way. The failed Avengers cartoon from the early 2000s. I think it was the year 2000. Ant-Man had this really odd-looking ant mask that he wore. Like the toy that came out looks really cool, but none of that I think showed up in the show. So,
and I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's I think Avengers United They Stand. Something like that.
That one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it was.
Yeah, okay.
Like in the first episode, Falcon joins the team, and they're like, the greatest moment an Avenger has is when they get their armor. Iron Man's like not on the show at all. Like he may have been on one episode, but like the team is Ant-Man, Wasp, Wonder Man, Vision, who starts off evil and does the whole Ultron thing, Hawkeye, Tigress, and Scarlet Witch, and then Falcon joins.
And to quickly go back to our monsters, though, and maybe leave that behind. Sorry, monsters. But you made me think of this before with who's a monster. Tigress started out early in Marvel Chillers, and there was one of her early appearances was teamed up with Werewolf by Night, so she was clearly cast as a monster. And why wouldn't she be? She's a were-tiger.
Yeah. So yeah, and then she just decided to stay that way. But then she's gone feral before, and
right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those like, how do you classify a monster in the Marvel universe? Is it by their makeup, or is it their intent?
Yeah, and what then you could say, well, it's not intent because then we have this man, this monster, the famous Thing title. So it's nice to have the blurry line because it allows for discussions like this. But I'd say the Hulk is a monster, but is he a monster in the sense of what we're talking about? Does he belong running around with Dracula and Frankenstein?
You see, I would say so just because Hulk's done more destruction and caused more mayhem than Frankenstein.
And I'd say especially now with Immortal Hulk.
Oh, definitely. That is very much a horror book. He is a horror character.
Yeah.
If ever I've seen one.
Yeah. And that one shot, speaking of Frankenstein, that one shot where one of the descendants of Frankenstein got Bruce Banner to donate blood, was it, or whatever, for the inanimate form of Frankenstein's monster, and that was a cheap way of amping him up. I think they gave him, he was at least half a Hulk strength. It was enough to tangle with the Hulk. So
that's when he got rid of his terrible furry vest.
Right. Yeah. That had come back after a while though, when with Elsa Bloodstone. Yeah.
Well, it's just because that way they can have their like the Marvel Frankenstein monster that is distinct from the Universal one that wears a suit.
Right.
Because this one I guess gets cold.
It reminds him of home or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. The Alps, who's wandering around in to escape the villagers trying to kill him. So. Yeah.
And, it's funny you say that because I could see the Marvel version of Frankenstein having more of a French accent than, the classic Universal. So
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps.
So, man, that's one heck of a tear. Oh, actually, Elsa Bloodstone, you bring that up. Monster fighters, like I mean, so the ones that have been around long enough get lumped into the MonsterVerse. Like, where do you think they?
I guess they really do belong there, and they're always going to be part of the cast of characters, even though it's the circles they run in. But yet, someone like an Elsa Bloodstone does have value for a generic team like Next Wave.
Yeah.
If it's really not right to call that a generic team, but generic in the sense that you have your mixed characters of this one fills this slot. Here's your heavy hitter, your leader, your energy person. I guess.
Yeah, here's your person that can fly. Here's your person that is your weapon specialist.
Right.
And
she falls into that. But you can't you really can't have a monster story without her in there. But with her inclusion in the, don't want to list it, Monsters Unleashed. I mean, I guess, or the connection to that. I mean, it's natural to have her in there because her Ulysses Bloodstone did fight giant monsters.
Yeah.
So you could say that's a bridge character.
Okay.
That helps keep those two worlds together when it's beneficial to.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's just kind of interesting because, like they get kind of lumped into, I wouldn't say the monsterverse, but, like it's you're a monster character. Whereas, like, I'm sure that, the Avengers have fought enough monsters that they could be lumped in with monster fighters too, but
at least they could get they could test out of that or automatically an honorary monster hunter or something like that. Well, Iron Man, getting back to Godzilla. The Godzilla that was transformed into not Godzilla but still Godzilla was in Iron Man.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Demonicus was involved and that became more of a... Has Demonicus ever broken out from being not an Iron Man villain after that point?
Man.
Not that he's really a big-time villain in any sense.
I feel like he showed up in like a Fantastic Four annual or something. Like he was just kind of part of the scenery. Like he wasn't, doing anything dastardly, but he was just, oh hey, look, there he is getting used.
You think Mole Man would take him in or something?
Yeah, or like it's Mole Man's nephew or something like. I'm my own man now.
Yeah.
Like,
just go, clean up that cave.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like some moloids can still boss him around or something. In exchange for a cave to stay in and maybe a chemistry.
I mean, when you have a look like that, which I guess for edification, we'll throw up a picture right now, because Dr. Demonicus is such a generic sounding evil bad guy, but I love him so much.
But there it is again. If there was someone at least self-aware enough in the Marvel universe, or whatever, if they had their what was it? What did they have? The Avengers Academy, when it turned out they hired the kids, but they had the kids there because of the powers, because they would become the next villains.
Yeah, they were most likely to become.
Yeah. So whatever algorithm they used to figure that out, should have been flashing when, hey, let's look at the new birth rolls and someone named Demonicus was born?
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye on that guy. Don't give him a chemistry set or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if he gets into any of the sciences, lock him up.
How far is he in school? Stop him just shy of his doctorate.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. Or let's give him, try to steer him into acting or something. Maybe make him a Roger Corman instead of, the next monster maker, just monster movie maker.
Yeah.
Just that much of a jump.
I mean, ooh, man, what if he had ties to Mysterio then? Oh no, now we're...
Yeah, that's right. Hey, that would make a good, funny Time Variance Authority story if you wanted to do it. They go back to try and stop that from happening and just make something worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, what could horribly come from that? Now, that would be a way to revive What If.
Yeah.
Not...
as opposed to what they're doing now. Or what if? Here's a theme. But I mean, the problem with what ifs is that Marvel, seemed to kind of run out of ideas there for a little while and started just using what ifs as the actual storylines.
Or hey, this is the story we didn't write for the thing that just ended or is still going on right now. We're just going to take one of our cast-off thoughts and just publish it.
Yeah.
Or I assume that's where they get the idea from.
Yeah, I mean, initially, yeah. So.
Who cares about that?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really cool if they made it a more timely thing.
Yeah, or...
Pun not intended.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
on some level. Knowing me.
Claim it.
Yeah.
Claim it.
Pun intended, damn it.
Yeah. But yeah, so the mixing of the Marvel monsters, on occasion, as you can do it. But Ulysses Bloodstone. And you knew that was a chase character of mine for a long time. Ulysses Bloodstone. But I did not read up on everything until I got those final issues, like from those Hulk magazines.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now I'm going to read the full story. It's like, wow, this guy, he's kind of bland.
Yeah, he's like a super watered down Doc Savage.
Yeah, really watered down.
Yeah, I mean, like it's instead of having like, oh, and here's my island, here's my shed.
Oh, and spoiler alert. I guess it's old enough that it's you know what. Don't listen if you really want to chase his character down. 3, 2, 1. It turned out he was controlled by an alien all this time or whatever. It was just
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, he wasn't even himself.
I think that's been kind of
Well, he's dead anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't think that that's part of any kind of history for him anymore. Like,
Well, whatever. But it's better to have Elsa Bloodstone around anyway, because you can have not Buffy in the Marvel universe.
And she's great. Like, she's tough. She's sweary. She's everything that most of the Marvel female characters aren't.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh man. Well, George, I think that does most of our time. I think we're just about out there.
We just got started.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean,
we haven't talked about Stegron. You see your monster now.
How's this? Since I threw out my favorite casual Marvel monster appearance with Gog, what is an appearance of a monster that everyone should go check out?
I would say actually I'm gonna tap into the kid, and I'm gonna say go for that Marvel 2-in-1. I think it's 12. Where the Thing fights the Golem. Granted, it's really old school, so take that with a grain of salt, excuse me, and just kind of tapping into my old roots. But anytime Foom shows up, don't go there.
I disagree. Go there every single moment.
Well, yes, if it's something to buy, yeah, but
I love Foom so much.
No, I do love Foom. Just beware that you don't get your hopes up too much.
There have been some faux Fooms.
Yes, yeah,
but Fin Fang Foom is absolutely positively one of the greatest Marvel monsters, of all time.
Yes, any of the Fin Fang 4 stuff.
Yes,
or there's a one-off, and I never remember what comic it is. When I'm going through my stuff, I find it. It goes, yes, where he's still in that trunk form, and he's accosted by Wong. He meets Wong on the way home. I think Wong's accosted by some muggers or something like that.
Yeah.
So Fin Fang Foom teamed up with Wong. I'd say that I'd have to, as far as a one-off obscure story, that would have to be my favorite. That's not super deep time.
I think that's one of the Halloween specials or something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah, so.
Great. One of the best standalone stories ever.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned.
Well, cool. Well, George, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll definitely have you back, and we'll talk more monsters. We'll even talk not monsters at some point.
Okay, I should run out of my lane every now and again.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's more to comics than monsters with us.
Yes, there is.
So, we'll see you all back next week, and it'll be just as entertaining, if not more. Who knows?